fundamentally, we are only measuring brain health after failure. I want us to remember this as a group today. So every behavior, my speech, my eye, my gait, my hand motion is actually a marker into how my brain is functioning. Every brain has a cognitive signature. What I mean by it is I have a unique combination of what is my learning ability, what is my processing speed, how does my attention vary, and that's different than yours, and that's different than yours, ma'am, right? It's almost like a fingerprint, except that it varies with experience, with circumstances, but it is unique to us. Cognitive game, that's assessing your memory, your attention, along with me speaking, and it is analyzing my voice signatures to look at both my emotional state as well as my cognitive attention and resonance, along with eye tracking, which is also measuring factors of attention, of focus. If you look at every organ in your body, the one organ that is the biggest predictor of your lifespan and of your health span is the biological age of your brain. I will say today that we are not talking about prevention at all. We have zero discourse in our healthcare field about preventing accelerated cognitive decline. And I posit to you that this is a problem. So I am going to ask, a lot of you here are clinicians or from the scientific background. For those of you who are clinicians, I want to start today's conversation by asking you a question. If you can tell me, when you get patients coming and you want to take care of their heart health, at what point in the journey of heart health, right from the beginning when we are talking about modifiable risk factors, all the way to the end when we are talking of the point of failure, where the organ has had sufficient damage to fail, right? This is a abnormal ECG, this is a heart attack, this is a stroke. It's in this journey, which will take anywhere between 5 to 20 to 30 years, at what point do you as individuals for your heart or as clinicians for your patient's heart begin to think about prevention? And at what point do you begin to say, I want to monitor this heart, I want to monitor how it's doing and if any action is needed? So absolutely right, strike early, strike strong. Prevention thoughts happen, we get health awareness messages from the age of 30 in India, especially given how prevalent it is, to start making people aware of the risk factors that put your heart health at risk, whether it's diet, whether it's lifestyle, whether it is genetic predisposition. When we talk about screening, it is again at that age that you're thinking, ideally way before you start getting any sort of symptoms like getting out of breath or anything that begins to indicate that your heart may not be functioning. This is when the assessment starts. Now I want to ask you a second question. Isaac alluded to this. When we now talk about brain health, the same spectrum, right from the beginning when your brain is working fine, but there might be risk factors, modifiable. When we now talk about brain health, the same spectrum, right from the beginning when your brain is working fine, but there might be risk factors, modifiable risk factors that are putting your brain health at risk, all the way to the point of failure, which is when a family member takes their parent or their spouse to a doctor, it's a neurologist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and says, he's forgetting, or this person goes and says, I'm not able to function. Yesterday I was standing 10 minutes and I didn't know where I am. Or, it's a daughter saying, I'm experiencing mood changes. This is the point of failure for the brain. When the brain is not able to compensate, is not able to function reliably to make you who you are and let you do the things you want to do. In this journey, which has again taken anywhere between 10 to 30 years, At what point as clinicians are we talking about prevention? And at what point are we talking about screening and monitoring the brain? I will say today that we are not talking about prevention at all. We have zero discourse in our healthcare field about preventing accelerated cognitive decline. And I posit to you that this is a problem. And when we talk about screening and monitoring, the first time people get screened for their cognitive function is when they're at their doctor's office. Families have picked up symptoms, or this individual is not able to work sufficiently. And then the doctor does an MMSE, they do an ACE3, they do a psychometric evaluation, they do along with a clinical interview to try and triage if this person could have early dementia, moderate dementia. In some really proactive people, they might have landed up in a doctor's office at mild cognitive impairment, which is an early stage of cognitive impairment, a good portion of who will go on to develop dementia. Not all, but a good portion, right? That is the reality in India, and that is the reality in upper middle class urban India. The reality is a lot scarier in Tier 3 India and a lot scarier in rural India, where nobody will ever go to a doctor, and such cognitive decline will be thought to be just normal aging. Given how much our brain makes us, that's scary, and that's not right. And we at Ivory exist despite everything that the investors told Isaac, because we do want to bring about a change in that. So moving ahead, right, like fundamentally, we are only measuring brain health after failure. I want us to remember this as a group today. And this is what all of us really have to start changing, like actively beginning to change. And one of the reasons this has happened is because we've also not had the tools. There's a question mark under early signs and early symptoms, because it's been really hard to measure. With heart, there are a lot of parameters to measure which have been well established, lot of clinical trials done, and that's messier with the brain. And that's even today's reality, though there have been some improvements. So if you begin to look at it, today, with cognitive markers of looking at people's cognitive function, with certain blood markers coming, like inflammation markers like high sensitivity CRP, which is more a risk marker, or plasma markers which are coming for amyloid and tau and different ratios, you have some indications, you have a pathway. None of these are confirmatory, none of these are diagnostic, but when you take these plasma markers, when you take effective cognitive screening, and you take clinicians' input, you can begin to triage. You can begin to triage probabilities and risk, and that is a lot better than the scenario I just painted. So it really now is opening up this opportunity to begin to move those arrows further, make it mimic heart health. And one thing I want us to remember is, it's really promising when you look at that heart health trajectory right now. This was not the case just 10 to 15 years ago in India. So what I'm proposing about brain health is very much possible, very much doable within the Indian healthcare ecosystem. Just 10 to 15 years ago, nobody knew physical inactivity and heart health are linked. A layperson did not know that connection. We in India have made that possible today. That awareness exists, heart monitoring exists, all of us are raising our hands. Our parents were not doing this screening for heart health. We can change that trajectory for brain health, and that makes me really excited. And if we have to do that, right, the only way we are going to do it is if we build better systems for measuring cognitive health, right? When you have easy, effective, reliable tools, measurement becomes protocol, it becomes easy. So looking at it thus far, as I said, we've looked at cognitive health in two ways, brain health loosely. One is performance, where you're looking more on cognitive health, so paper and pen psychometric assessments. At the same time, otherwise there has been MRI, PET, which have been prohibitive in cost and effort. So, are only used when really, really needed to confirm a case. But our present today is really changing. And the way it's changing is, one, in terms of cognitive performance, we have digital assessments that are coming up, which are a lot more sensitive, a lot more subtle, and are able to pick up, instead of failure, they are able to pick up early changes, cognitive drift, which is a huge difference. Failure is when the brain is not able to compensate and that person cannot function the way they were. Early changes is when they're happening in some of us right now, for sure. We are able to function, we are able to do our day-to-day tasks, but our cognition is beginning to drift in a way that indicates clinical pathology. That is that early period, that opportunity to intervene, to slow, to stall, to reverse decline. As well as there are plasma biomarkers coming, and people will talk to you in depth about these. I'm not here to go in depth, right? I also want us to look to the future. This is what I want to give in the next 5 minutes. So if you go ahead, I think in the future, what will this cognitive tracking look like? Like, let's imagine that for a second. And of course, on the blood work or physiological side, I'm sure there are other markers that are coming, that are going to be more confirmatory, more proteins that will be discovered, that are going to be more reliable as diagnostic markers, right? So this is the world we are moving towards. So going back to the present, when I speak about digital assessments, I want to give you a flavor of why they are better than your paper and pen psychometric tasks. So this is one of the digital assessments that we at Ivory provide to the clinicians. It is an 18-minute task, right, which is digital. As a clinician, anybody can do it on their mobile phone. Clinician doesn't need to administer it. It's self-administered. There are 3 tasks that the person is doing. The tasks don't have any words. The tasks don't have any objects that have a culture association. It's random shapes that you're seeing. At the end of these 3 tasks, you get a profile of somebody's cognition, their memory, their executive function, their processing speed, and their attention. So you get a profile on how they are functioning, and this score that you get is normed to their age, to their gender, and to their education levels. Is it diagnostic? Not by a far throw, right? Is it indicative? Is it a tool in a clinician's hand to start doing that triaging a lot more effectively? Absolutely. Because it is digital, because it's measuring things in milliseconds, because it is capturing a lot of parameters, it is a lot more responsive to clinically meaningful, subtle changes. That is what we want to really capture, rather than failure, which is too late. So when you look at tasks like this table, the only thing I want to tell you is these tasks are not perfect. But where they are better is, rather than just giving you one cutoff score, they are giving you domain-wise indications of performance, which allow you to take a much better assessment on what might be going wrong in a patient. What is the domain network in the brain that might be at risk? The second thing is they are a lot more sensitive. Because of their digital nature and the variables they're capturing, they are more sensitive to picking up subtle deficits. They are flawed in that what is normal or abnormal, if I do the test, it is being compared to people my age, my gender, and of my education levels. And there's going to be variance in there. And that is where there is an error margin in all of these tasks. It is there in psychometric tasks, it is there in the digital tasks, but this is the best we have in the world at the moment, that we as individuals and as clinicians can use for our patients. Moving further, I want us to think about the future, right? So if we go ahead, when you talk about future, I mentioned something like cognitive profiling. 2 concepts I want us to think of. One, every brain has a cognitive signature. What I mean by it is I have a unique combination of what is my learning ability, what is my processing speed, how does my attention vary, and that's different than yours, and that's different than yours, ma'am, right? It's almost like a fingerprint, except that it varies with experience, with circumstances, but it is unique to us, right? Which is why the who is intelligent varies so much. Like, what is intelligence? There are so many different types of intelligences, and that depend on our cognitive skills. The reason this is important is why population norms are messy. Because there's no one right level of attention or executive function or memory. When I talk about clinical deficit, it is relative to me. How was my memory at a certain stage in my 20s, and how is it now in my 40s, and how is it changing, right? It is relative to me that clinical deficits start having a meaning, especially in the early stages. The second thought I want you to play around with is I posit to you that everything I'm doing right now, I'm looking at you, I'm smiling, I'm moving my hands, I'm speaking about an idea without like memorizing a script, but because I know of it, so I'm forming words. You are listening. Each of these, I'm standing straight. All of this is a behavior, and it is being coordinated in a large part by my brain. So every behavior, my speech, my eye, my gait, my hand motion, is actually a marker into how my brain is functioning. We know this in extreme cases, right? Like your gait is very unstable, it becomes an indication of Parkinson. But it is also true at very, very minute levels. So the question is, can we not use these external behaviors, especially when they're captured through digital tools like the smartphone, which is changing our world, whether we like it or not, to get a glimpse into the brain? Two thoughts: unique cognition for each of us. So our cognitive changes need to be personalized. Thought number two, our behaviors, a lot of our interactions with the world are actual indicators into our brain function. So let's move ahead. I think where the world sits, and this is something that at Ivory Cognition Labs we have been working a lot on, is that if you keep these two concepts together, my individual cognitive signature along with the digital biomarkers, you contextualize it to the function, the lifestyle, the environmental factors that our wearables are giving us, stress, sleep, all of that, you can get immense insight. You open up a crazy world. You can now begin to predict somebody's aging trajectory. You can predict when their clinical deviations are happening, which are not random fluctuations, but are clinical deviations, because you know their baseline, not a population baseline, but their baseline. And you can even start thinking about optimizing their cognition, right, in a particular domain. So you have now an individualized journey, quite a bit like personalized medicine for cancer, into taking care of someone's cognition, ensuring it remains at the level that they want for an independent, happy, and productive life late into their 60s, 70s, 80s. So, and this is going back to that table, I want you to focus on individual tracking. I think that's the most important thing. When you look at a cognitive monitoring, which is monitoring you over time in some very easy, non-invasive way, you get your baseline, which is being tracked for trends, looking at what is your normal fluctuation, and being able to look at trends over time to tell you when something might be a clinical indication. So I think there is immense opportunity there, and I think that is where cognition is going, because this is going to become a lot more reliable and a lot more meaningful at an individual level. And I want everyone today to get a flavor of what this might look like. This is a small piece that we have been working at Ivory Cognition Labs. I'm showing you a small glimpse and a beta version. But if you can play the video, Shudipta. This is what this interaction might look like, right? My God, I look very excited, so let's see. All right then, I'm ready to test my cognition. Are we ready? Audio, please. Very good, Preet?
Yes.
Let's go. A decent day. It has had a lot of travel today for the Cognivers conference. So left from Pune post breakfast. Thankfully, did not get too much jam, which was nice. Once I came here, it was really nice to just meet everyone from Ivory. Last minute hustle happening. We've been trying to get everything in place, make sure the mics work tomorrow and things don't fall apart, which is fine. That's it, I think, all I can remember about the day. Woohoo! Peak capacity today. What you saw was a small thing that you might do everything, a cognitive game that's assessing your memory, your attention, along with me speaking, and it is analyzing my voice signatures to look at both my emotional state as well as my cognitive attention and resonance, along with eye tracking, which is also measuring factors of attention, of focus. And it is giving me that 92.5%, which made me very thrilled. And I've had days when I've gotten 40% on this beta version. The idea is this is creating over time a baseline that is for me, Sumiti. And when these fluctuations happen, when a big trend change happens, now you have a lot of digital signatures which are being captured from my voice to my eye tracking abilities. We can add other components like hand stability with a smartphone. Like the world is endless, guys. And this is, I think, really going to be where the future is going to go. So I'm quite excited around this. Last question, why does this matter? I think Isaac spoke about it, how important the brain is to us, how much of our brain is, it makes us who we are, right? If our brain circuitry changes, our personality changes, our moods change, our way of processing the world changes. So it is about preserving us, it is about optimizing us as people, really, when you're talking about brain preservation or brain optimization. And if you can't remember anything else, remember this, right? One of the key reasons is that if you look at every organ in your body, the one organ that is the biggest predictor of your lifespan and of your health span is the biological age of your brain. So if you are worrying about your liver, yes. Your heart health, yes, because these things are also affecting your brain. But in this world, when we are beginning to focus on longevity and of living well, of healthy aging, we cannot do that without considering our brain. Thank you for your time. It was lovely talking to all of you, and I hope you enjoyed.